All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. It is Backdraft Day again, as usual. Um, Backdraft CMS is a full-featured content management system intended primarily for nonprofits and small to medium businesses. We are working on creating a product that has comparable features with Drupal 8 on an architecture that's more similar to Drupal 7. So when Backdrop 1 is released, it won't have all of the same features as Drupal 8, but we are planning on doing regular releases shortly thereafter, so we should be adding all of those features in the coming months. While we are creating the system, we're going to be fixing bugs, ones that were found in Drupal 7, as well as ones that were found and fixed in Drupal 8. And as we find our own issues, we will fix them as well and make sure that our system is as bug-free as possible. And while we're in there updating bugs and adding new features, we're also going to be trying to simplify existing systems, as long as adding new features and simplifying existing systems doesn't require changing too many of the APIs that are already in Drupal 7. And that's because we want upgrading websites and porting modules to be as easy as possible when moving from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. We're planning on releasing Backdrop 1.0.0 this fall. We're pretty close. We've got a couple of major release blockers that we're going to talk about. And then after 1.0.0 comes out, we're going to be releasing regular versions every few months after that. So for major new things that we're working on and that are currently blocking the release, the biggest thing is the new blocks and layout system. This is something that Drupal 8 doesn't have yet. It's something that's been in the plans for a really long time, but they aren't actively working on it that we know. And what we're going to be able to do is separate the layout of content from the theme by having our new blocks and layout system. So where you put things on the page will be managed in a different interface than, changing your theme. So if you change your theme, you're not going to break your site, which has been a long time problem in Drupal land. So far, we've made a lot of progress with the blocks and layout system. We've got Nate working on replacing the current themes block system with the layout system, and I started on some conversions from plugins in panels. We don't have any updates, I think, on that since last week, but we are kind of trudging along with moving that forward. Views and core is the other major thing that we're working on. We've got the core views in the core of Backdrop, which is great, but we need to convert all of the listings that are in core with pages that are generated by views. And in order to do that, there's a bunch of subsystems that we also might need to move over. For example, we've got actions that need to be turned into views bulk operations tasks. So we've got kind of a list of complicated things there that need to be done, as well as just building the page as a view. And the other thing that is going to change everybody's life, if you're a Drupal 7 developer now, we've got config management. CMI, as it's known in Drupal 8 land, the config management initiative, is also in Backdrop, though it's done slightly differently for Backdrop. And though the core system is in and Views is saving its config into config files instead of into the database, there are a bunch of other major systems in core that have not been converted yet. Primarily content types and fields, which without having content types and fields in config, you don't really have config. So we need to get those converted, and those are going to be kind of complicated, hairy conversions. And there's some other systems, too, that need to be converted as well that aren't quite as hard, but do need some attention. And so those are the three major things that we're working on that are preventing release: getting blocks and layouts done, getting views converted as much as possible. And I'm not sure that's an entirely a release blocker. There are some things that we should have done, but if they don't get done before 1.0.0, I don't think it'll be the end of the world. However, config management definitely needs to get done before we can release. So other things we're trying to do in keeping up with Drupal is making sure that all of the changes that have happened to Drupal 7 since it's released are also in Backdrop, and choosing the things that we care most about in Drupal 8 and making sure that we get those conversions done in Backdrop as well. So in Drupal 7, we've got 3 security issues that need to be resolved in Backdrop, and we have a handful of commits that have been made to core that also need to be ported over. I'm going to wrap up the 724 to 727 issue today after this call and get those closed out. And I think there might be a pull request for that already, but I don't think it's passing tests. And then the 728 to 31, these are the more recent versions of Drupal 7, have a handful of new issues we need to work on as well. In terms of Drupal 8, we have identified several areas that are fairly important. Getting all of the HTML5 stuff done that Drupal 8 has done in Backdrop, we've got a handful of those left. Some CSS cleanup, we've made a bunch of progress on this since last week. We have 48 out of the 50 issues that we've identified as being important completed, which is great. And then in JavaScript, there's just a bunch of tasks of running JS hint on the code and getting everything cleaned up and reorganized into the correct positions. And there's a handful of those that are left as well. These are, of course, not release blockers, but they are fairly important in terms of making our code easy for people to work with in the future. So if we have someone that comes in and they want to help clean up JavaScript, that would be great. But if that doesn't get done, we're not going to hold up the release on getting those files reorganized. So we've got a couple of other big areas of work where we've been spending a bunch of time lately. One of them is separating Backdrop's identity from Drupal's identity. And this is something that's really important because at the beginning when you install Backdrop and it says Drupal and it looks like Drupal and it feels like Drupal, you're not really going to get a sense for what Backdrop is as its own product. So we have so far updated the installer. We're working on rebranding the administration theme. And more recently, what we've started doing or what we have done already is renamed every instance of Drupal and Core with Backdrop, so it doesn't say Drupal anymore, which is good. And what we're doing right now is trying to choose a new mascot. So Drupal has always had this really cute little water droplet, and everybody who does a Drupal camp or a Drupal event or a Drupal product sometimes takes this water droplet and uses it for their own. Backdrop is, of course, moving away from the water droplet as part of setting up its own identity, but we need a similar kind of a mascot that people who are working with Backdrop can kind of use for their own camps or products or whatever it is that they're doing that's Backdrop related. And so the last few times we've been talking with Drupal developers about it, we have converged on the idea that Backdrop should have a dragon as a mascot. And we think that that'll be a lot of fun, both for Drupal developers to kind of poke fun at Backdrop and be like, oh, there be dragons, right? But also a lot of fun for Backdrop to just kind of have a kind of an icon, an identity of its own. It seems to be really fitting. We want to name our dragon Drop, so he's Dragon Drop, which is kind of clever if you're nerdy and I don't know, Nate spent a lot of time writing Dragon Drop, so there's kind of a back history there too. And so we love the idea of a dragon. I just personally love dragons. I just hadn't thought of it as a Backdrop icon mascot thing, but as soon as somebody mentioned it, I was like, yes, we need that. So what we've been doing in the last week is meeting with designers to help us get a dragon constructed so that we actually have a visual representation of Drop. So we've got a couple of versions that we got from our designer, and I think we're really, really close. He's pretty cute. He's a snuggly lap dragon as opposed to like a mean dragon that you don't want to mess with. Which I think is kind of perfect for us being kind of a lightweight, fun, easy to use, low stress CMS. At least that's what we're hoping, and not a big scary beast. So we're really close, and when we have something, we'll show it to you. But we don't have it today, so no dragon yet. It's in the way, on the way. Other things that we've been working on recently in terms of code are the user experience improvements in Backdrop. Primarily, we have been going through and removing and renaming things. So cleaning up like the names of the menus and making sure that things are kind of intuitive when you use the user interface, like making sure it says edit when you want to edit and configure when you want to configure and doesn't get those backwards. And I think it's kind of going to make it a little bit more intuitive for people to get in and start working with it. So I know that last week I created, I don't know, like 10 or 15 issues. It just involved little terminology cleanup. Some of them were taken directly from Drupal 8. Some of them were patches that were against Drupal 7 and have never been looked at. Some of them are things that we just thought up for Backdrop where we're like, how are we going to solve this problem? We're like, oh, if we just remove the navigation menu, then everything will be fine. So there's just some simple cleanup on stuff like that going on too. Another thing that we're going to work on is adding a rich text editor, which is super important, but again, it's not a release blocker, so it might not be done before we release Backdrop, but we will eventually get a rich text editor in Core. If somebody wants to help us with that sooner, we would love getting it in sooner, but again, we've got other things that are currently more important. And the last major thing that we're working on is theme system cleanup. I've also got a couple of pull requests going on these where we're going to be doing things like removing the process layer, And that's kind of a doozy. It requires kind of rethinking how we deal with our template files, which of course fits in with our new blocks and layouts theme system. So there's a lot of kind of chicken and the egg stuff going on there, where I'm doing some cleanup in terms of moving around where things are called, but we've got to wait until we get our new page rendering engine in before we can make the final changes there. But there are a bunch of other stuff in theme system cleanup too that we have been working on, like consolidating template files and making things make a little bit more sense. But the major overhaul is going to wait until after blocks and layouts are done. It's also less important. Blocks and layouts is a release blocker, and the theme system cleanup is a good improvement, but it's not going to hold up our release either. So lots of stuff going on. The next section of this meeting is supposed to be for updates from the PMC. I don't think we have anything this week. I don't know, Nate, if you have anything.
Nope, I don't have anything.
All right, so just kind of business as usual. And then we are working on a couple of things that are not related to the code of the Backdrop project itself. We've got an API website underway. It's actually showing our APIs, which is good. It needs a little theme love, so I was going to see if I could just drop the theme from our public-facing site onto the API site today. I just got access to it yesterday, so hopefully we can do that. And then I know Luke is currently working on setting up change records there. So as soon as we get that content type built, then we're going to need a bunch of hands on deck to help create the change records so that people who are porting modules will be able to see what is different about our APIs. So if you don't have any coding skills, but you want to help, draft some content, we definitely need change records, and that should start pretty soon here. Other stuff we're working on is we need an update server. So that's when your website checks with the mothership to see if it's up to date. We need to actually build that mothership that will be able to tell you whether your modules or themes need to be updated. We also need an official GitHub service. So this is something so that anyone who's creating a contrib project for Backdrop can register that project as being specifically for Backdrop. And then our website will be able to search GitHub, find the projects that are Backdrop projects, and list them in one central location. So it will help finding stuff be a little bit easier. We need to build that. And then, of course, we've got our own website, which is going to need a redesign. We're going to try and get that done kind of in conjunction with the release of the product. So right now, it's obviously less of a priority than actually getting Backdrop out. But we have talked to a couple of designers about helping getting designs ready so that at least when we're ready to implement it, we have something to run with. So that should be getting underway in the next few weeks here, too. Other stuff. Let's see. So every Thursday we have a little sprint after this meeting. So today, starting in 10 minutes or so, Nate and I will be around and we'll be working on Backdrop. If you want to jump in and help, we would love to have you. We're also going to be doing in-person sprints when we can. Not this coming weekend, but next weekend we're going to a camp, Drupal Camp LA in Southern California. And they have a designated meeting area, but it's not necessarily an official sprint. It's just an area where you can sprint. It's going to have tables, it's going to have power, it's going to have coffee, and we're going to be there and we're going to be working on Backdrop there. But it's not an official sprint. We're just going to be sprinting with other people. So if you would like to come sprint with us, you're welcome to join us in LA. We'll find a place to do it. We'll drink some coffee. We'll write some code. It'll be great. But we are going to set up kind of an official sprint at BADCamp, which is this November 6th through 9th, so at the end of the year. So if you want to come and work with us then, it is still to be determined whether we're going to be working at that point on Backdrop 1.0 or 1.1, because it could be that Backdrop has been released by November, and what we're doing is working on adding new features or getting in, little tiny, I don't know, like CK editor or things that don't require API change. But we could also be doing bug fixes on minor versions, or I don't know what our plan is yet for that far in the future. So I would encourage, if you want to do some sprinting, do it with us on Thursdays, and we'll try and come up with another in-person sprint before November as well. We are probably going to be attending the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit in October. I don't know if they have a designated sprint day or not, and I don't know if we would be able to sponsor it or welcome to participate, but I will reach out to them and see what the plan is for that. And then I guess we could organize our own sprint if we needed to. That's not associated with a Drupal event, but so far that is not currently on the agenda. So we're just going to do as much as we can from here for now, and we'll see where we end up. Nate, do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, not really. Just going to be rolling along. This past week was just kind of, doing work. So we'll just keep chugging.
I know you've got a ton of pull requests on your plate, so thank you for reviewing all those. Yeah. One thing I do want to say is that we had a really great intern all summer. A kid from the high school that I went to came and worked for us for like a month as an internship as part of his high school program, and then he stayed on and he worked on Backdrop for us all summer. It was Hello, Mr. Cat, if you've seen him in IRC, and he was absolutely amazing. And he left, he's leaving this week to go to college. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of Paul's help, and we hope he comes back at winter break, or if he's got downtime, that would be amazing. But yeah, so he was definitely a force in our pull request queue, and so I'm really happy to have had him, and sad that he's gone. But college is important, it's fun, so you should go have fun with that and worry about Backdrop later. Okay, well, I guess that's it. It's kind of a short meeting today just because we've been kind of heads down for a while, but we will make an announcement about the Dragon when we have one. I think we've got one final round of revision to go, and then he'll be part of the party. And yeah, I think that's it. Till next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.